First of all, welcome to all of you who've joined this webinar. Uh, this is a webinar where Zeb and AWS wants to go over the generative AI journey and see how and what we've done for other customers and also help you in partnering with you in your AI journey. So first, I want to kind of do a round of intros for the people on the call. First, I would like to kind of bring in AWS. We have solution architects from AWS, Oliver and Abhinav. Guys, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sounds great. Thank you, Vivek. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Abhinav Sareen. I'm a principal solution architect here at AWS, and I work with the consulting partner like Zeb across North America with the customers on their AI, ML, and generative AI journey. So welcome again.
Hello, I'm Oliver. I'm a partner solutions architect. I work with partners like Zeb all across Canada.
Thank you, Oliver and Abhinav. Over to Zeb, Brendan, and Sid, please.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm a senior solutions architect on the Zeb side. I've been working in the AWS ecosystem on the partner side, helping businesses build and grow on AWS for many years. I dabble a lot in the data and AI space as a specialty. So I'm excited to talk about what we build here, what we do, and how we can help you guys. I'll kick it to Sid.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. I'm Sid. I'm the head of AI at Zeb, and I pretty much oversee all of our AI and ML opportunities. And I'm again super excited to be here and really talk through our process as to what does transforming your business with AI really look like, and how we implemented it in the past with other customers.
Like you said, and I'm V, the managing director of delivery for Zeb. So I oversee a lot of the client journeys with regards to Gen AI, and I would be the main MC on this webinar. So again, thank you all, and let's go over our agenda for today. The agenda is that we want to first go over the business transformation or understanding what we do, how we work with our customers, and understanding their business and trying to find out the different use cases that would be pertinent for them from a Gen AI perspective. As part of that, we also look at or kick the tires, so to speak, on finding out where their data is, how their transactional systems and other applications are built, how are they working from a AI perspective. Are they ready for AI? Is there any gaps, etc.? Is what we're going to be looking at. Then we're going to be going over the data readiness part of the AI implementation, which is a critical part. Then we're also going to be going over the AWS funded programs and things like that, where how AWS will partner with clients like you all. Then we're going to go over some client customer example that we worked on. We're also going to go over the length and breadth of AI-based platform that is available in AWS. First, a little bit about Zeb. Zeb is a 15-year-old company based out of the United States and Canada. We just got awarded the Premier Partner status with AWS, and we also got awarded the Partner of the Year last year for 2024. That is primarily based upon a lot of the things that we do across the board for our customers, but it's also an acknowledgement of what we've done from a Gen AI perspective. So I just want to go over the blueprint for looking at how customers are oriented and what can we do for customers from a business AI perspective. So to do that, what we first do is understand and work with the different stakeholders. We do a bunch of workshops with the stakeholders in understanding the businesses and then mapping those businesses to our past experiences. And we try to categorize in three different categories. Like the number one category that we try to look at is what I call a general purpose category. These are the things that all companies have to be dealing with these things. Things like IT support, customer service, HR support, financial support, account payable, account receivables. These are general areas which are there in pretty much all the companies, whether they are product companies, whether they are service companies, whether they're manufacturing companies. All of the companies have all of these things. So that's the first category. And in this, we have a bunch of past experiences, which we then align and see which ones fits the business that we're talking about. The next category is what I call business core specific areas. Like these are areas which are specific to the business. Like, for example, if it's a mortgage company, there are things like which are specific to mortgages where we see whether we can apply Gen AI. The last area is what I call innovation. Because we have Gen AI, is there any changes we can bring to the business? Fundamentally, is there new areas of opportunity for businesses? That's what we look at. Like, so that's the second part. Like, and once we do all of this, we then look at what is the appetite and culture of the company and see where they are in their business journey, and then come back with a bunch of recommendations, which we then talk to all the stakeholders and the critical parts of the CXO suite. When we do this, we talk about our recommendations, why we think it's pertinent for your specific businesses, and look at the pros and cons and what it would take to kind of bring this to fruition. The next part is we also look at evaluating and preparing the main thing, which is the data. Like we look at the data ecosystem, look at things from different perspectives. Is the data correct? We always see, right, because of changes in businesses, etc., and also the transformation that they've done, there are multiple sources of data, and we need the data to be accurate, or we need the amalgamation of data in a proper perspective if we have to apply AI. If the data is not right, AI is just not going to work. So that's a critical part. Once we do all of these things, we then break down what we call the implementation roadmap and talk about the different achievable phases, the lower hanging fruit, what is short term, what is medium term, and what is long term, and then come back with a milestone driven delivery roadmap. Once we have all of that, some of the key things which happen across the board at all times, evolving with the journey, is what is about the data governance and security validation, which are critical from an AI perspective. Because the main concern that we see with most of our customers is about, is their IP going out, where's the data residing, etc. Now I'm going to turn over to Sid to talk about the data readiness for AI implementation. Sid?
Yeah, thanks, Vivek. I think that's super helpful context, and it kind of touches upon what I wanted to cover here as well. I think now AI has become a little bit of this buzzword where we're become, super frenzied on doing an AI use case and doing an AI implementation. But Corey, what Vivek was saying, a lot of it is, taking a step back and understanding the core data behind the AI implementation. Without that data being in a data ready state, the AI implementation itself will not return any actual value. And that's how you lead to, non-productionalized AI use cases that don't leave that POC stage. When we look at this, how do we take this data into an AI ready state? We see it in 5 different phases. And that first phase starts with this data source assessment. So what does that data source assessment look like? That data source assessment basically talks about first identifying what data is core to the AI use case that we're trying to achieve itself. That data can be in various different types of structured and unstructured data. So we have to first identify where that's living across the different source systems. The next phase that's core towards this data readiness and AI implementation is assessing the quality of each of those different source systems, and then turning that into a single central location for that data, which we consider as the data warehouse. A lot of that consolidation effort has to be done because that's how we remove these data level issues like data noise and duplication of records and lack of a single source of truth. Those are the same issues that lead to problems when looking at the generative AI solution, when applying the generative AI solution on top of this data. So this data consolidation step is like the single most important step in ensuring you have an accurate Gen AI solution when it goes to production. The next phase that we look at is this data transformation. So now we have all of our data into a single place, but is there any other transformation we can do on top of that data when it's coming in various modals, right? Apart from just regular, your structured data, when you have data living in documents, when you have data living in images and videos and transcripts, making value out of that data as well, using some of the Amazon services that let us transform that data to then be operationalized by a generative AI solution. Then the last piece is, after we have all of our data into a single place, and after that's been transformed and extracted the metadata that's possible from these different sources, we need to really apply that business level context on top of this data. We, as the business and technical stakeholders involved, understand how that data relates to the generative AI solution. But the goal that we're really trying to do with this data is to have an AI solution, have a system, have the same level of context us as the stakeholders have on that data. Which is why through some of the services like OpenSearch and Amazon Neptune, we're able to take the semantic understanding and bridge some of the connections and gaps between those data, right? Between multiple different records, and bridge that business level understanding within that contextualized layer. Lastly is that generative AI solution aspect of it, which is that underlying foundational model that we're interacting with, and how we can use this data and layer it on top of this model. Amazon has a lot of different ways, which Abhinav will touch on a little bit, of how that data can be used within a model, right? Whether that's through the pre-training of a model from the scratch, or whether that's being used through RAG strategies that are offered through existing foundational models that Bedrock has to offer. That last aspect is the core aspect as to how we tie this overall data plus AI solution together. If you want to pick it up from here and talk about how some of these generative AI services can be used.
Yeah, thank you, Sid. As I said, actually touch base on a very, very important critical piece of data foundation. So we wanted to get the data foundation right. So for example, I've worked with the customers where if you get the chunking strategy wrong, then irrespective of which model you're using, you won't get the accurate results. So we want to make sure that we get the foundation right. We are storing the data in the right vector databases. And once we have done that, then we are ready to move on to build the GenAI applications. Now in AWS, our AI, ML, or generative AI stacks, we see it in 3 different tiers. In the bottom tier, we have the infrastructure layer. And this layer is for the customers who are the builders. Customers who would like to build their own models. They would like to train, build, and deploy their models quickly. And for those customers, we provide actually the specialized hardware, Trainium, Inferentia chips, and also services like SageMaker that allows them to actually train, build, and deploy their model at the scale in AWS. Now, if we move one layer up, we have Amazon Bedrock. And Amazon Bedrock is a service that allows you to build and scale your generative AI applications in AWS very, very quickly. And it also comes with a lot of enterprise features that our customers were asking, like agents or guardrails. We want to make sure that whatever we are producing is actually with all the guardrails in place. Or as it talked about, some of the customers are looking for customization. They want to actually use the domain-specific model. So can you do customization? Can you do fine-tuning of these models? So Amazon Bedrock does provide all of that, and there's no infrastructure to manage, completely serverless. Now, if we go one more layer up, that's where our Amazon Q sits. And Amazon Q is our generative AI-powered assistant that helps customers across their business in so many different personas as well. Like, for example, Q for Business can help the employees to connect with their repository and ask questions. Q for Developers can help the developers and IT professionals looking for code suggestions and things like that. And then we have many other different expertise of Q in QuickSight, with which the business analyst can generate the reports by just using the natural language. We also have Q in Connect and Supply Chain. So the idea is we wanted to give it in all of these different areas so customers can ask questions and it makes their life easy. Okay, so let's look at 2 of the different flavors of the Q here. And I'll broadly touch based on the 2 of the services, Amazon Q and Bedrock, in the next few slides. So Amazon Q for Developer has been trained on 17 years worth of AWS knowledge and data, and it helps the developers and IT professionals throughout the life cycle of IT development. So for example, even before starting the project, if you're in the planning phase, you can start using Q for Developer. It can help you write code. It can also help you do security vulnerability scans. It can provide you the suggestions for the remediations. So throughout the software development lifecycle, from planning until the security scan and remediation, Q developer can help. Now it can also help, let's say if you are planning to migrate from, let's say, Java 8 to Java 17, that's a very heavy lift. right? For a developer to do, it takes many days, if not months, to actually do these kind of projects. With Q for Developer, you can do that in hours or if not minutes. On the side, we have Q for Business, which is also a fully managed generative AI powered assistant that can help you connect your enterprise data very quickly to Q for Business. And then you can ask questions, you can summarize tasks, you can create Jira tickets. So you can take actions and do a lot of summarization and thereby improve the employee productivity. Now, other than Q development business, as I said, we also have like Q for Connect, supply chain, and for QuickSight that can help business analysts as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about Amazon Bedrock. So Amazon Bedrock is the easiest way for you to build and scale the generative AI applications. It gives you the choice of leading foundational models through a single API. And you can do model customization in Bedrock. So if you're looking for a domain-specific model, you want to train it on your data, you can do that using model customization that is available right out the box from Amazon Bedrock. If customers are building RAG-based applications, right, where they need to use their own enterprise data, we also have Amazon Bedrock for knowledge base that provides fully managed RAG. So fully automated RAG that you can use with Amazon Bedrock. Now, agents, another very popular and powerful tools that we are hearing a lot about. It can help you do complex tasks, right? So if you're building complex solutions where you need to do multi-step tasks, agents can help in that. For example, if you're building, let's say, flight booking system, you can have multiple agents do that for you. And again, that is also available right out of the box from Amazon Bedrock. So you get all of these enterprise features along with a lot of responsible AI and guardrail features that can help you. And everything comes with the security, privacy, and data governance as AWS provide with any other service. All right, so we truly believe from the start that there's not going to be one single foundational model that is going to lead. Right, the customer needed a choice, and we were committed to actually provide that choice to the customer. So we provide foundational models from so many different foundational model providers. These are the leading foundational model providers today. And they have some of the really powerful models as well. So for example, you can look at Anthropic's model like Sonnet 3.5, industry-leading benchmarks, right? We provide Haiku from Anthropic. We have models from Meta, Llama models, 7B, 80 billion models as well. And then many other providers. And we are actually increasing this portfolio as well. Last reInvent, we launched Amazon Nova, which is a very state-of-the-art foundational model as well. So other than the models that was there in the previous slide, if you remember, we in last reInvent, we also launched Bedrock Marketplace. So it is for the customers who are looking for domain-specific models. So let's say if somebody is working in an industry, fintech or healthcare, right? And they're rather than training their own model or fine-tuning their own models, they're looking for the model off the shelf. They can use Bedrock Marketplace that has 100+ models today. All right, let's touch a little bit more on Amazon Nova. So Amazon Nova provides state-of-the-art foundational models that delivers frontier intelligence and industry-leading price performance. And this price performance is the key here. So we have heard from the customers, hey, we built this foundation, like we built this POC, but the return of investment is not justified. It's very expensive to actually keep this POC running and even more expensive to deploy it in production. So should look at Amazon Nova models. It's very, very cost effective and really fast. So Nova includes actually two categories of the models. One is the understanding model that you can see on the left-hand side. And these understanding models accept text, images, video inputs, and generate text output. And on the right-hand side, you can see the content creation or generation models. And these accept text or images as an input, so in your prompt, and generate the video output. Just very quickly to go over some of these models. So Nova Micro, it's text-only model. This is the only model that is text-only model on the left-hand side. And it is lightning fast and produce responses at very, very low cost, very, very fast as well. We have Amazon Nova Lite and Pro that are mostly capable, and these are the multi-models. And you can use that as the best combination of accuracy, speed, and cost on wide variety of tasks. Premier, which is going to be our most intelligent model, will be coming soon. I think we'll be launching it in Q1 2025. Now on the right-hand side, you have Amazon Nova Canvas and Nova Reel. So Canvas is a state-of-the-art image generation model. It creates professional grade images from text or the image input that you provide. And it comes up with a lot of other features as well. So you can edit the images, you can change the color palettes and adjust the color schemes and so on. And Nova Reel is a video generation model that allows customers to easily create high quality videos based on the text or images. So you can input as an input, you can pass either text or image, and based on that, it will generate the video output for you. Currently, Amazon Nova Reel generates 6-second videos, but will support the generation of videos of up to 2 minutes in the coming months. So again, for just to take it home, for POCs and production deployments where you've seen that the ROI is not justifiable, you need that price performance, look at the Nova models and see if it can help. And please let us know your feedback as well.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'll hand it over to Brandon.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Abhinav. I will say before I go into the content of this slide, that Zeb's actively building out use cases on Nova, on Q, even on Nova Reels most recently, for a lot of our customers. So pick our brain on those technologies. I'd say the big thing with Nova is we found that even customers who are using Claude via Bedrock can make a really small parameter switch to using Nova and save a lot of money because the cost per inference is quite low. So definitely talk to us about that if you're at the stage where you have a POC in place and you're looking to cost optimize. And then speaking of cost optimization, I think a lot of people know AWS for its services, know AWS for its infrastructure. They don't know AWS as a partner in helping them build. And that's one of the surprising things that you learn as you work in this ecosystem is that AWS loves to fund their customers to try net new ideas, to try net new services across the gamut. So whether you're startup, SMB, enterprise. And I just want to touch on 3 of those. So when you work with a partner like Zeb, a Premier Tier Partner, and a generative AI competency partner, of which I think there's only like 20 or so in the world, Zeb being one of them, it unlocks the ability to essentially get funding on your behalf. We make the business case for you. We interface with AWS for you. We claim the funds for you. We make the process as streamlined as possible. All we really have to do is define a use case. And so if you're at the ideation phase where you're looking at a proof of concept using these technologies, we can get up to $25,000 to fund that proof of concept, regardless of the sector you're in. If you're a startup, things get a little more lucrative for you. I don't know how many of you on the call are in a startup, but in the startup world, off the jump, we can get a complimentary AI ML Pathfinder assessment. And we'll link this at the end of the presentation. We can actually get this complimentary for most people. It's just really easy if you're a startup. AWS really likes to invest in their startup ecosystem. And in addition, when it comes to actually building the product, things get a little more lucrative. So you can get up to 50% of your total project cost covered by AWS. So if you have a net new product you want to push to production and you want Zeb to help you build it, 50% of that can be covered right off the jump. And then because we're generative AI competency partners, we get the most lucrative funding here, option C, which is available for everyone that works with Zeb, where we can claim up to $100,000 in funding for generative AI workloads that make their way to production. And this isn't just an up to as in like, you're never actually going to get it. This is actually numbers that we've got on behalf of the businesses we've worked with. We've claimed the maximum amount in many of these because of the business case we're able to make in several instances. And so I'll kick it over to Sid to talk through some of the use cases. In fact, I think all of these use cases, Sid, were sponsored or co-funded by AWS. And so keep that in mind as we walk through them.
Yeah, and before Sid, you take over, I just want to remind you, all the participants in this webinar, that you could raise your questions and we'll definitely address on a first come first basis at the end of the presentation. And the ones that we are not going to get to, we'll definitely answer them and send it back to you. So please do raise your questions in the QA chat bot, and we should be able to take care of it at the end of the session. Sid, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you. And you're absolutely right, Brendan. Almost every single one of these I checked before the meeting has been like a heavy funding from AWS on these engagements. So to set a little bit of context for the first customer, we wanted to walk through the journey that Vivek illustrated, and that roadmap of understanding the business use case, and then from understanding the business use case, how we did the translation to an AI solution. The first customer I wanted to talk about was Shub Photography. Shub is a school photography company. So they take, they are the people who go to the school and take the photo of your children and basically, bring it back for all the family relative members to comment off of. What they wanted to do, the use case that they came to us with, is they already have a software that does photo correction and like photo enhancement for when you want to make slight touch-ups to the photos that were taken, but that costs money. As every time you want to every time you want to send a photo to that photo correction software, is you're getting charged on a per photo basis. And what they wanted to do, just as like a little bit of a marketing play, was to first give people a preview as to what these enhancements could look like, and then before you end up actually having to pay for it, and then end up giving it to the photo correction software once you're satisfied with what you look like in preview. But to build that preview implementation and to have a software that would able to give them what it looks like at a preview step without having to pay money each time to show a preview of it, that's what Shub Photography came to us for, and to see if we could build that photo correction software. And by the end of this, what ended up happening and the efficiency we brought to the solution is really a groundbreaking story. So when the first two scenarios that they deal with both background removal as well as color correction, right? And with both of these scenarios, I just wanted to talk about the background removal aspect. With background removal, we received a large volume of examples of, from that previous photo correction software of the original image and then the background removed. And what we first thought we could do with the implementation is give it to Bedrock and have Bedrock come back with some of where the background coordinates existed. And then once it returned the coordinates, we would remove them through the programmatic solution that we would build and the image manipulation code that we had fleshed out. But then we saw that when giving to a general purpose model, like giving to a Claude model that's hosted in Bedrock, that doesn't really have specific context on just background removal, it was resulting in a little bit of inaccuracy when dealing with, really detailed out things like hair and other those kind of features. Which is why we then pivoted the solution towards using a custom SageMaker hosted model that is purely just for the sole purpose of background removal. We took that large volume set of examples and that we had that the customer provided and used that to then train two base models that we identified through trial and error that ended up performing the best. And that's how we ended up with what that production level solution looks like now, which achieved the accuracy that the customer was looking for. The second scenario that we had to handle was color correction. With color correction, it was a little bit of the opposite scenario where we felt that we had a set of examples of color corrected images from the customer, but this time the volume was a little bit less. And we wanted to first see what efficiency could we get with hosting a SageMaker model and trying to perform color correction through the SageMaker model. And that's when we saw that due to the less volume of examples, we didn't really get the accuracy we were looking for when just going with the SageMaker approach. But then we pivoted back towards using Bedrock to do the same coordinate-based identification and identify which pixels in the image had to be color corrected. And that's when we saw proof of accuracy, and we saw that the solution was working. But we still saw that when we started testing on various examples, we saw some where it performed really well and some where it was a little bit below the benchmark that we had in place. When we looked into each of those examples, what we realized is because there's a variation in skin tone or something like that that's being fed in the input of the image, the model is applying the same color correction regardless, right? So even if you're slightly darker skin or slightly lighter skin, the same color correction is being applied on the image, which is why we understood that while the approach is working, It's just that there needs to be a standardization that's in place when giving the input to the model. And so through pre-processing techniques and tweaking the prompt that we were feeding in, we sent the same image to Bedrock after that after it's been normalized and pre-processed. And that's when we started to see the accuracy that we were looking for from the solution. And what this effectively did is it replaced, rather than just being the software that's used for preview in the for Shub, it ended up replacing their entire photo correction software because it was achieving that the same level of accuracy at a much cheaper cost. Brendan, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I'll add one thing here because I think it's important. At Zeb, I'm fairly sure based on our client base, we could run this entire company and make net profit on just supply chain. And why don't we do that? Because we're very interested in these interestingly fringe use cases. When we get brought something like this, we get excited and we like to build it. And I just want to highlight that something like this doesn't fit neatly into a box. So think about that as you are ideating on use cases internally that you might want to work with Zeb on, that we get excited by these interestingly abstract use cases. So you can keep going, Sid.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's super helpful context for the type of customers and projects my team likes to take apart. We'll move to the next slide. So the next customer I wanted to walk through and kind of break down the implementation that we did for them. This is Chromosoft was basically an application that really streamlines the whole mortgage loan applying process, acting as both the middleman for the person who's applying for the loan, as well as the mortgage loan officers who are reviewing and approving that loan on their end. They which I think is a huge a large problem that a lot of us are trying to solve, and that's why we were really happy with this customer story. And what they wanted to do with the generative AI implementation is basically take documents and information that contains personal information as to who the borrower is, and and things like their name, their SSN, and other personal information that is relevant towards them, and in a secure manner through the application extract that information and then pre-fill the application, the form that they're going to have to fill within the application that is set out to apply for that mortgage loan. And so that's exactly what we did. We took a combined OCR plus generative AI approach where we used a service like AWS TextTrack and gave the different types of documents and templates as a reference to TextTrack, so it knows what it could expect in the input. And then when it receives a document like that, TextTrack will return a list of the entities and the values mapped to each entity. And then we then give that input to Bedrock to then do the mapping between the form and the fields within the form and the data that's the entities that is TextTrack returns. And so through that mapping, we've then been able to pre-fill those data within the application. And this has resulted in a 50% time saved in applying for these loan applications from the user. Sorry, I'll just wait for the full animation. The next use case we wanted to go to is a really what I think a powerful customer story as well as to how generative AI is impacting real businesses and creating real value. Pop Menu is a company that wants to help these smaller local restaurants and mom and pop shops and give them an opportunity to have a professional site and do professional marketing towards their restaurant, even when they don't necessarily have the same expertise and skill set as well as the time to invest in that aspect, right? And what we've been able to help Pop Menu with is basically through the integrate with their existing application and take URLs or the current website the restaurants are using, the local restaurants are having. So these like really old non-professional looking websites that have some of what their menu items look like, the prices and the images, and then take those websites, give it to this AI solution, and then the AI solution will then return, these are all the different menu items we found on their site. These are the images associated to every menu item, the price, and then that way Pop Menu can take this data set and then use it as the basis for what the new website is going to look like within the pop menu application. And that process exactly describes what we achieved with this implementation. We used both a mixture of Textract as well as Bedrock, and 2 different models on Bedrock, one for extracting the text from the menus, and one for doing the image categorization, and then another for the actual and using Textract to retrieve the documents and PDFs that may exist within the site. And another core part of this solutions framework is doing that web crawling as well, because they may enter a URL of the page, but that menu will not be on the immediate URL. So we have to look at the sub pages within that overall application, look for the menu items across the board, and then send all of it towards this multi-agent step framework that we have with both Bedrock and Textract, and then process that data and then turn it into this combined JSON of the different menus and the different menu items within that. And then we store that. Once we create that data, we then store that within a Postgres DB that the application is working off of to then be able to be accessed and then view that same menu on the new website that pop menu creates. This resulted in a model accuracy of 85% and a 70% in time saving in this whole website onboarding process that the user previously had to go through, manually entering each and every menu item, which was, of course, difficult.
Yep. I just want to add one thing on that last one quick. You don't need to go back. Just the broader point is that this was one of the cases where we sped up the onboarding process for an application. I can think of 2 other of our customers where the premise is the same: speed up onboarding using generative AI. I would say that's a very common way in which we can use generative AI in most applications, is however you get net new customers to sign up, speeding up that process, whether it's EHR or whether it's whatever kind of application you have. Generally, generative AI can be applied to speed up the onboarding process. So if you're listening, if you're on the call, I'd be curious for you guys to ideate on that. How do we get customers onboarded, and how can generative AI remove the human in the loop? Because that's something we find a lot. I'll kick it back to you, Sid.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's extremely helpful context about the human in the loop scenario, and a question we get asked often as well. Coming to the last customer example that I wanted to break down a little bit more. This is a enterprise logistics customer that we were working with that faces around 25% of they're basically the middleman between a shipper, someone who wants to get a shipment out, and then the carriers who actually fulfill those shipments. The problem that they were really facing here is that they're on a year-on-year basis, they're facing close to 25% turnover, where the shippers that they had the previous year are no longer there the next. And well, some of this turnover could be attributed just to the fact that that shipper is no longer in business or no longer viable. A large percent of it, close to 18% of that turnover, has been attributed to just loss of contact, where the account manager who's responsible for that shipper just forgot to follow up or forgot to check in with them. And this solution is to prevent that from happening, and basically act as a little assistant towards that account manager. And the way we achieve the solution is basically interacting with the customer's underlying data warehouse that has all the operational data that contains the past loads against a shipper and the shipments that they're basically sending out. And we basically use a custom SageMaker ML model to develop a pattern-based recognition, like a pattern-based recognition off of that operational data, so that now every shipper that the customer is working with has its own pattern that's been identified by the solution, and once we identify a shipper that's breaking that pattern, that's breaking the trend of shipments that they're used to, we the solution is automatically going into the Slack channel that is dedicated for that shipper and letting the account manager know, we should have been expecting a shipment from them, but we haven't received it. They've broken their pattern. The other core aspect of the solution, which is probably difficult to understand just through the diagram, is that not only are we using the operational data, we're also using HubSpot data that's there, as well as Slack data that's there, to then understand the cadence and the communication that the account manager is having with the shipper. We use this information as well to then help adjust and course correct the pattern that we found out through the ML model, along with the information and the communication that's been happening with the actual shipper itself. And then we send that little notification across accordingly. Through this implementation and taking it to production, it's resulted in 15% of customer retention for the customer.
So that brings us to an end of the parts that we wanted to cover. So on the screen, you do see the QR code, which redirects you to the Gen AI Pathfinder Workshop on the Amazon Workplace. Brendan, do you want to go over a little bit of the process for that, please?
So we kind of opened up by talking about how we go through this process with businesses. Essentially, all the use cases we covered started out as a Pathfinder workshop. And so what this essentially allows us to do is use some AWS support to get a fully funded workshop for everyone in this room for your business, whether you have an idea of how you want to use Gen AI, whether you don't, whether your data is in a good spot, whether it's not. We'll help you kind of map out what the path looks like to get you from where you're at today to a fully fledged generative AI solution in your application. So essentially, if you scan that QR code, or I'll post a link in the chat here in a minute, you can go to the AWS Marketplace, and you have to be signed into an AWS account in order to request. There's a little button to say request private offer. Click that, fill out your name, fill out your email, fill out your company, and then we'll be in contact. We'll help you make a business case to AWS. We'll help get funding rolling. We'll help get you on the AI journey or the data journey if you don't feel like you're quite ready to get on the AI journey.
And one of the key parts of the workshop also is to, answer any of the guardrail questions, because those are some of the most important questions that, the board, senior leadership wants to be answered, because they don't want to have Gen AI and have a security problem on their hands. So having said that, let's go over some of the questions that we've got. Brendan, are you able to see the questions?
I don't think I see a question pop up yet.
I only see one that was answered.
So do please post any question that you have. We're more than happy to answer anything to do with like our experiences, challenges that we've had, any questions on the AWS funding programs, or even on the depth and breadth of the AWS offerings from a Gen AI perspective. We'd be more than happy to answer those questions.
How is the security? This gives Zeb a lot of sensitive data. Do you mean specifically the Pathfinder Workshop? Do you mean, I'll answer multiple ways. In terms of the Pathfinder Workshop, that's absolutely right. There's a lot of sensitive data. So generally we treat this as sort of a professional services project. So we get NDAs in place, we get MSAs in place. We transact with you, right, in a means that protects you and protects your company's data. And then anything we build for organizations, we build in your tenant. You own it. We hand it off to you. So it's not the case that we're building something and then licensing it to you, so to speak. We're believers in giving you the keys to the castle. I hope that answers your question, Amber.
And sorry, I just would also want to touch on like another variation that question could go is beyond just giving Zeb a lot of sensitive data, I think that also could be routed to the fact that the AI solution that we're building has a lot of sensitive data. And that's also true because all of these different solutions, and even like the Chromosoft example that we had is dealing with personal information that's very specific to the user on board, which is why we're using these core services of AWS itself, which is why we're using Amazon Bedrock and not just these external model providers directly, not interacting with a Claude API directly or a ChatGPT directly. We are making sure that it's living within your environment and your tenant. And so then that way, the networking that's happening is remaining within that private network and the chain, and the data is not being leaked outside. We are also implementing, when we have these AI use cases that are customer facing or that are external user facing, like Vivek was touched upon a little bit earlier, utilizing services like Bedrock guardrails, as well as our own guardrail framework when we have to layer that on top of like a custom model like SageMaker. We ensure that there's a part of that discovery session that we're having and sit down with your team, we're taking what are the possible questions that we just don't want the solution to be asking, as well as what is the focus area, and then using that to tune what the guardrails are and making sure it stays within that line. We sanitize both the input that's coming into the model as well as the output that's being received. So it's two-way sanitization that's happening across the board.
So I see a question with regards to ROI and what is the general time that it takes to kind of reach ROI. So typically for most of the use, in fact, all of the use cases that we were talking about, the ROI has been in months. And when we do the workshop, we have a clear outline of what are the total cost of ownership, and what will be the timeline to ROI, so that executives, business managers, leaders inside the company can take a very clear sighted decision on what will be the benefit out of doing these use cases. So that's a key point that we do and we cover as part of the workshop.
Yep. Oh, another question came in here. What is the average price range beyond the 50% and after that ends? That depends heavily on what you want to achieve. I would say that. And then I would say the 50% case, just to highlight that for a second, is the startup criteria, but we've seen cases where things were fully covered on the AWS side, as long as we can make a good business case for that to be the case. But I would say to give an average price, the variance is far too high because it depends entirely on what you're looking to achieve. And then the next question I think is related, which is an enterprise that needs to create their own AI. So in other words, a fine-tuned model. I would say at that point, we should have a conversation, I would say, more than anything, Amber, to understand what it is that you're trying to build and why. The reason I say that is because again, the variance there is like, are we training a fine-tuned generative AI model? Are we training just a neural network to solve some hyper-specific problem? I would like to understand more from that point of view. And then we could also on that call give you an idea of how AWS funding can play a role.
And I think the reason that initial call is so important is because I think that we're definitely business problem first and then solution secondary towards all of our engagements that we look at. So we don't just hear the customer requirement and automatically map it to the solution. We want to first understand, does that technical solution really is that the right approach for this business use case? And then with that, identify what the next path forward is. There's been a lot of cases where customers have come to us saying, they want their own model, they want their, it to be pre-trained and fine-tuned on the greatest in things. But then when they realize the TCO that it could take to operate and host these solutions, we make informed decisions where we can achieve the similar results that they're looking for through more cost-effective options like a RAG-based approach if necessary.
Yeah, that's a critical part that we've seen continuously, because the number one question, right, is there ROI? Is this just like some kind of thing that we are doing just from a technology perspective? It is never that. It's always a business case. It's always about ROI. And the next important question is security. If all the questions are not answered from a security perspective, we cannot move forward.
Yeah, and I can add to it actually. I think everything that Jeb team said is absolutely correct, right? Like we start with the ROI first. Like for example, if you're looking for a smaller model and you want to fine tune it on a domain specific data so it can perform similar to what a larger intelligent model is doing for a particular use case, makes sense. There are many different ways you can do it. There is a fine tuning. There is also distillation that we launched, like where you have a teacher model that you can train a student model based on that. There's also a marketplace now, right? Like you don't need to actually start training the model from the get-go. You can actually look at the other models, other model providers already providing. If that is aligned or resonate with the use case, you can actually use that. So going back to that business problem and the ROI, if any of these approaches works better, you can use one of those. There are many different ways to actually achieve a customized model in AWS.
And with regards to challenges in what we've seen, right? The main challenge that we've seen is the executive sponsorship is definitely one of them, but the more practical challenges are absolutely to do with data. When we go in there, I mean, most of the companies that we are working with, they have gone through a lot of mergers, acquisition. Data is there in multiple parts. So, for most things, things as essential as customers, vendors, products, etc., need to be streamlined. And Sid kind of touched upon the warehouse aspects. So, this is typically any AI project is a multidisciplinary, project with data involved, sometimes app dev kind of involved, definitely the AI team, and definitely the infrastructure team involved. So it's typically always a multidisciplinary project. All these parts are involved. Above all of this is the whole business transformation, business understanding, business analysis, and business process change, which is important and which is going to be a key part of any AI project. Any other questions?
I think that's about it, Vivek.
Call it a wrap. First of all, we thank all of the participants. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to be sending out this deck along with the links for the Generative AI Pathfinder Workshop. So you've got everything. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, anything that you need to have answered. We're more than happy to kind of schedule something with you, answer questions on the email. So please reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you. And thank you all. Thank you so much for joining.